Now should be on. Interesting. So
Hello there. Just want to see if folks can hear us okay online.
studies.
Well,
from
congratulations.
Holding a.
You must be very
We do
proud.
I can hear you.
I can hear.
Thank you.
And how many parking spaces do you need and how,
Thank you so much. We are
kinds of stuff. Can you do this?
going to go ahead and get started shortly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think Andrew's gonna have to.
We technically have quorum, but we have a few other folks who have let us know that they're coming. So I think that it's worthwhile to wait a few minutes and just start all together.
Oh.
Thanks, everybody.
Very, very different.
Okay.
No problem.
All right, so we're still waiting for a few folks to join and our chair will be here shortly. So I'm going to pass it off to our vice chair, Kim, to kick us off.
No, I forget how we start off, but I'm sure it's straightforward. So, yes, we are calling our meeting to order today on October 28th. Everybody, thank you for joining us. For folks who are online, let's get started with roll call.
Commissioner Reed is on her way, not here yet. Commissioner Daddle. Here. Commissioner Allman.
Here.
Commissioner Kim.
Here,
Commissioner Serena.
Here online.
Commissioner White.
Here.
Chair Mbondo is on her way. Commissioner Austin.
Here online.
Commissioner Alvarez.
here,
Commissioner Bennett is not present. Commissioner Britton.
present.
We have quorum.
Okay, I think we're doing the land acknowledgement next. And who do we have? Oh, we have Commissioner Serena.
Oh, sorry. First, I forgot to call our ex officio members. Thank you, Tess, for the reminder. Ex officio member Sarah Morgan is, hold on, being promoted to a panelist. Sarah Morgan is here and rejoining the meeting as a panelist right now online. Ex officio member Carla Fresquez from UC Davis is not present. And then I see Oliver Snow from Supervisor Provenza's office on the line, also being promoted to a panelist right now. And I do not see anybody here from Supervisor Ferricks's office. That completes roll call. Thanks for the reminder. Getting rusty. You gotta forgive me. I've had a 5-month break here. And then for the land acknowledgement, we had Adelita as our land acknowledgement reader today. Are you able to do the land acknowledgement?
Sure. No problem at all. I am happy to do that. We should take a moment to acknowledge the land in which we are all gathered for thousands of years. This land has been home to the Patwin people. Today, there are 3 federally recognized Patwin tribes: Kachil-Dihi Band of Wintoon Indians of the Calusa Indian Community, Quetzal-Dehe Band of Wintoon Indians, and Yocha-Dihi Wintoon Nation. The Patwin people have remained committed to the stewardship of this land over many centuries. It has been cherished and protected as elders have instructed the young through generations. We're honored and grateful to be here today on their traditional lands.
Cool. Thank you very much, Commissioner Serena. I think we are moving to approval of the agenda. So I believe have that. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. That's Commissioner Britton. Commissioner Alvarez seconds.
And I'll take it to a vote. Commissioner Reed, not present. Commissioner Daddle.
Aye.
Commissioner Ullman.
Aye.
Commissioner Kim.
I
Commissioner Serena.
Aye.
Commissioner White.
Aye.
Chair Mbondo has joined us. I will give her a moment to sit and gather herself before asking her to comment on the roll call vote. Welcome.
Thank you.
Commissioner Austin.
Aye.
Commissioner Alvarez.
Aye.
Commissioner Bennett is, sorry, I'm gonna not hear yet. And Commissioner Britton.
Aye.
Chair
Mbondo.
Chair Mbondo.
Aye.
Thank you so much. Motion passes.
I guess at this point, we can pass it back to Chairman Bondo.
Apologies for being late. Thank you, Vice Chair Kim, for getting us started. And I am ready to continue. Where are we at?
Great. We are now on item 3, approval of the August 26th meeting minutes.
Thank you. So referring to my fellow commissioners, anything you would like to say about the minutes of August 26, 2024? Any amendment needed, corrections, edits, discussions?
I do have a question.
Commissioner Dattel.
How come we don't have the names of the commenters, for example? They're just a commenter.
So this was the format that we moved to about a year ago to try to simplify the meeting minutes. We have looked at several different rules and ultimately settled on something very similar to Chatham House rules for meeting minutes. And so that's the format that we've been using. Partially, we want to get the flow of conversations that have been had without necessarily, if somebody wants the detail of exactly who said what, they can refer to the recording, but this is to get the flow of the conversation as efficiently as possible for staff.
So it's something that the commission had voted on and approved.
Yeah, I just couldn't remember what the logic was, but it's mostly an efficiency measure. Thank you.
Thanks.
And we'll note it's 4:13 and Commissioner Reed has joined us. Welcome.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm late.
No worries.
Great. So do we have a motion to approve the minutes of August 26, 2024?
I so move.
Move to approve, Commissioner Britton?
Commissioner Britton moves to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Ullman, thank you. Discussions on that before we vote? None. We ready to vote? Thanks, Kristen.
Commissioner Reed.
Aye.
Commissioner Battle. Aye. Commissioner Ullman.
Aye.
Commissioner Kim. Reina.
Aye.
Commissioner White.
Aye.
Chair Mondo.
Aye.
Commissioner Austin.
Aye.
Commissioner Alvarez.
Abstain.
And Commissioner Britton.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Great. Thank you all. Let's move on to agenda item number 5. We're going to listen to staff announcements and reports. And we will start with a welcome of the 2024-2025 Civic Sparks Fellows. So Kristen, I'll let you do the introduction, and then we'll all have a chance to express hopefully our excitement.
I have a Can you hear me okay? Great. Could I have our 3 new Civic Spark Fellows please join me over here at the podium? So we are thrilled to have our 3 new fellows joining us for this coming service year. Just as a reminder, the service year for our fellows is the end of August. So they're about end of September.
A month in or so.
Month in, thank you. A month into their service, and they will be with us through August of next year. And so I will let, so in order, Natalie, Andrea, and Juana, let them introduce themselves to you all. Just say a few words about who they are, what their background is, and what they're going to be supporting during the year. But I will say in the month that we have had together, they're amazing. We are so grateful that they are here and already so excited for all of the work that they're going to be doing to support the Climate Action Adaptation Plan implementation, but then also our broader sustainability initiatives. So I'm going to pass it off to Natalie Aguilar to kick us off.
Thanks, Kristen.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet you all in person. I'm Natalie Aguilar. I use pronouns she, they. I'm a UC Davis alum. I studied environmental policy analysis and planning with a double major in Spanish. So I've lived in Davis for 3 years now, and my title is the Equitable Building and Electrification Fellow. So I'll be leading the weatherization programs and working with Yuri on the energy programs. It's very nice to be here with all of you today.
Welcome, Natalia. Thank you. Natalie, sorry.
Hello, I'm Andrea Garza. I'm a local of Yolo County. I'm from Esparto. I went to school at UC Berkeley studying political science with a focus in comparative politics. Now I'm here. I'm going to be working on equitable communications and community outreach. So I'm really excited to be connecting with my community and giving back. So thank you all for being here.
Welcome, Andrea. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Juan Ibarra. I am a graduate of UC Davis. I am attempting to transition from teaching into local government, and I will be supporting our Regional Resilience Collaborative this year. Thank you.
Wonderful having you on board, Juan. Welcome.
And so all of our fellows, when you email the sustainability at Yolo County or sustainability.bos@yolocounty.gov, we have a new email now, that they are now all on that email list as well. And their individual emails mirror the format of ours. So first name dot last name at yolocounty.gov. And so you will all get to know them over the coming months, but gonna embarrass them. Can we give a round of applause for our fellows? Because it takes a lot to dedicate yourself to an AmeriCorps year of service. They're giving a lot of their time and of themselves to the county and our programs. And so we're really grateful that they're here.
Kristen, thank you. Before we move on to 5B, can you refresh our memory? So now how many people are in the sustainability team for Yolo County officially with the fellows?
We are now at 7 folks. So
before, we also give a round of applause for our sustainability team. So first of all, again, welcome to the fellows. We're very excited to be working with you. And could we also please give it to our sustainability team for the work they did when Kristen wasn't there, because that wasn't an easy, those were not easy shoes to fill, but also for just the selection of the fellows. I think they did a great work there. So thank you to everyone. Before we move on, I also need again to remind us that we are really privileged here in Yolo County. There are localities that do not have a sustainability department, do not have a sustainability manager. When Kristen joined us, we literally had no one, attached. The county staff who was with us were doing interim job. So I really want to give it to you, Kristen, for being creative, finding solutions on a very small budget, and being able to increase your team from just one person to all the fellows that you trained. Some moved on to other opportunities. But again, this is a tour de force. So we are very, I just want to acknowledge that, and we look forward to all working together. Thank you again, Kristen, and welcome back.
And I just want to piggyback on that. I apologize. And I know we have a full agenda, but I wanted to say just a couple things that I think that are worth noting.
Is
The
that
first is, this is Bernadette.
Commissioner Austin speaking? Here
Yeah,
we go.
sorry, Commissioner Austin speaking. I apologize. I just wanted to share my enthusiasm and excitement for the fellows. And also, I just wanted to particularly thank Julia Olson. Not only was she stepping up in Kristen's absence, she absolutely demonstrated a level of, I think, professionalism and knowledge. So really, really want to appreciate all that you've been juggling, Julia. And then, and she's a former Civic Spark Fellow. And then I just wanted to make a plug. As you're probably aware, Civic Well has administered the Civic Spark program for the last 10 years, and we recently transitioned it. But I will tell you, because I have this inside track, that the folks who conducted the interviews for this year's fellow cohort were just blown away by the caliber of people. And I feel like the three fellows who are joining the team clearly are the right balance of experience, of lived experience and expertise that are really going to benefit our work. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you. And for people listening online and members of the public, as a reminder, one of our commissioners, which is Commissioner Bernadette Austin, is the Executive Director of Civic Well, and Civic Well is the home to the Civic Spark Fellows. So they've been helping localities all over. So this is an example, I want to say, of cross-sector collaboration. So again, Bernadette, thanks again to your team for providing us with these opportunities. And I echo what you said in thanking Julia for the big work and the dedication that she showed during Kristen's absence. So we're moving on, but I do want to give the commissioners a chance to also say something right now. Then we're going to listen to B, C, and D, and then reserve questions for the end. But for this particular item, if you have something to say, please say it now or forever hold your peace. Anyone?
I would just like to say again, like a sincere thank you to Julia and Yuri and Tess for all of the work that they did when I was gone. The to-do list that Julia had when I started leave was over 12 pages long of individual bullet points. And I came back to a full program plan by every individual project of what had been accomplished, what priorities were, and the soft landing for me coming back after months away when I know that staff were working incredibly long hours and overtime that they were not being compensated for. I mean, especially our fellows, and we talk about the work that they do and the work that Julia was doing. It's just, I'm so grateful for how much they've dedicated themselves, and I'm so proud of them for the work that they did. And thank you to NJ and to Bernadette for shouting out staff. They really deserve it.
Thank Kristen. Okay, so we'll be moving on now. And
I have a quick comment.
Who is that?
I'm sorry, my hand was up. I know it's, you guys can't see, and I apologize for butting my voice in, but I just wanted to say welcome to the new Civic Spark Fellows. I'm really excited to have more, more folks folded in the work we're doing, and of course, just working on community engagement and just the deep amount of work that's required for, the heavy lift that we all have. with the climate action and adaptation plan. So welcome, and of course, welcome back, Kristen. You know, we know that you have a lot on your plate, and of course to the existing staff, you know, just many thanks all around, but just really want to, you know, warm welcome to our new Civic Spark Fellows. We're so excited to work with you.
That was Commissioner Serena. Thank you, Adelita. Okay, seems very quiet in the chambers and I guess online. So I think we're ready for agenda item 5B.
And Yuri and Natalie, I will pass it off to you to give the update on the electrification program.
So while you're getting to the mic, so 5B, we're going to receive updates on the YOLO electrification program. So home energy score program, weatherization program, and electrification retrofit rebate outreach program. That was is a mouthful. Okay.
Everyone, first I'd like to start off by just giving a lot of praise and thanking Natalie a lot for doing a lot of work in the short amount of time that she's been here. It's been really great to collaborate with her on these programs coming out. And just to kind of break down the layout of updates, I'll be providing a brief update on our CBO selection, and then also as well as Arrow, the electrification retrofit rebate outreach program. For now, I'll just call it Arrow. And then I'll pass it over to Natalie so she can go over the program timeline. So going back onto the CBO selection, we've just completed our interviews last week, and we'll be going forward with Cool Davis and Decolores as well. We're very excited to continue our partnerships with these and, you know, just strengthen and improve our relationship with CBOs. And in terms for Arrow update, the program launch is still pending, but we've received a lot of updates from VCE on types of communication that residents will have to get more information when contacting Arrow. So there'll be a voice channel, chat channel as well online, callback numbers, and then outreach will begin mid-November. That'll be providing residents with the URL for the website number, as well as chat features for residents to start getting those in. And right now, VCE is going through just materials to be approved and reviewing Spanish materials too, to see if Spanish materials could be incorporated. And they're currently also developing program metrics for evaluation. And I'll pass it over to Natalie to provide a brief update on our energy program timelines for the Home Energy Score pilot program, as well as the weatherization program. And we're always happy to take any questions after.
Hi, everyone again. So for our timeline, in regards to our timeline for the home energy efficiency programs, Yuri and I met a couple weeks ago, and originally we had thought that we would be ready to launch by mid-November, but there's been a bit of a setback after the E&E TAC meeting this last Wednesday. And we heard CBO feedback that they would like a more collaborative process in terms of the formulation of our outreach program and our materials. And so now we're thinking about launching end of December to early January. Yeah.
Thank you. Is there more to say before you want to take questions now? Or?
That was the end for our update. Happy to take any questions though.
Okay, commissioners, maybe we start online if it's okay.
Sure.
Thank you, Robin. Anyone online, Bernadette or Adelita?
I see
No
your-
comments.
Okay,
I apologize. I'm sorry, my hand was up. Let me lower it.
It's okay. I cannot see the screen, but anyone from the at-large pool, at-large commissioners? UC Davis or Yochadihi? No reaction? Okay. Commissioner Dattel.
Yeah, I was very interested to hear that the partners want a greater say in maybe the materials or the formats, or can you just say a little bit more about what they hope to contribute
Yeah.
more to.
We would love CBOs to have their full voice incorporated in every step of the process when it comes to CBO, when it comes to materials, program rollout, evaluations, participants involved within the programs as well. We already have all of these, most of these materials created, but we want to review them with CBOs to make sure that they fit with the needs of the community.
And if I can add one other comment on that, I think a lot of our format for commission meetings is we come with staff recommendations and look for feedback on those. And I think that this gives us an opportunity to reframe how we think and let's start with that conversation of input first. Let's not approach with recommendations. We brought you on to be the experts in this space. And so I think in no way is this a setback. This is a great opportunity to frame our programs in the best possible way. So we're so grateful also to Cool Davis and DeCloris for being so open with and constructive with the feedback that they've provided us about how we can best move forward in our work and coming back on as partners again, and really excited about this opportunity to shape these programs and the rollout with them, because they are going to be the voices and faces of this program in the community for most of the outreach. And so it's really critical that they feel very comfortable with anything that we're putting out.
So I have a clear understanding of the order, of action, actions taken. So we understand that outreach and engagement technical advisory committee works on, the outreach material with the CBOs. CBOs give input, and then this comes before the commission, and then you go out and do the work, right? Okay, so just so that be clear. Something else also that I want to stress regarding this new process, meaning having the CBOs be part of the creation of the material, provide input. We're not on that agenda item yet, but I think this is relevant to what we're talking about. I think this is also going to be key to the implementation phase of the CAP, like that order of action and the collaborative process. So just wanted to flag that and keep that in mind as we're moving forward. Anyone else on the floor maybe have a question or comment, suggestion? I'll take your silence as some sort of approval of everything you heard so far. Okay. Thank you very much, Natalie and Yuri.
Thank you.
So I think now we're ready for agenda item 5C. So let's hear an update on the early action projects and the American Rescue Plan funded projects.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you all for the kind words. First off, that's really, really sweet. So thank you all. It was really lovely getting so much support from you guys over the summer. But I'm just going to give you a quick little update on a couple of our early action projects. The first one being our climate action and adaptation dashboard. That RFP was recently released, and so we've got a social media post out for that too, highlighting that that's out there, and that will go ahead and close on November 14th. So feel free to share that out with your networks, and we're really looking forward to getting that going, hopefully by December. And so then with our next update, we've got the inventory and feasibility study. Currently, the AECOM team that's been supporting this project with us has completed the site visits of all of the sites throughout the county to take a look at all of the county facilities and figure out a plan moving forward for how we can reduce our county greenhouse gas emissions. So looking forward to giving you more updates on that, since once we get this part done, the rest of the project is going to move pretty quickly. And then the last update that I have for you guys is our zero emission vehicle action plan. And so we have closed out RFP evaluations and the decisions have been posted publicly. And so we have gone, it'll be DKS Associates. That's going to be the selected consulting firm that's going to be supporting us on the ZEV action plan. So we're in the middle of the contracting process right now and are hoping to get that out or get that wrapped up and hopefully kick off by December or early 2025. So I'll pause there for any questions, but those are all of the brief updates on our early action projects.
Any question? Thank you, Julia. Kristen, did you want to add something? Okay, questions on this agenda item? Julia, do you see any hands raised online?
I do not.
Okay, so thank you. This concludes our time on agenda item 5C. We are ready for an update on the CAP timeline and long-range calendar.
So we are entering the final stretch and wanted to outline our path forward to an adopted CAP. So staff during my absence worked with our consulting team to go through all of the many public comments that we received through our online form, through meetings with the county staff green team, with the commission, follow-up conversations that we had. There was a lot of information to go through. And so we have put together a list of changes that are being made to the document. We are in the process of finalizing that. And we have, and we will talk about this in our ARP funding, but bringing on the DeCloris Resource Center to translate the CAP. Originally, when we had discussed the translation piece, it was going to be the strategies and our CAP at a glance. We've expanded that to include our community engagement and a few other elements of the plan as well. And so I think this is a great opportunity to have more of this plan translated and available as we move forward. And so we plan to early next month, first week of November, ideally, send out, make public the updated final CAP and the change list that highlights all of the public comments that were integrated into the final CAP and how. And then before the adoption process at either November 18th or the 25th, depending on the date that we decide on our next agenda item, that is when we intend to take a vote as the commission to adopt the CAP. And so we will then, pending if that is approved, the plan would be to bring it to the Board of Supervisors. The last meeting of the year is on December 3rd. So it'll be a quick turnaround from either November meeting date, but to bring it to the board for approval on December 3rd. And that will then officially kick off our implementation process. So that is the timeline mapped out before you. Hopefully you all will have a few weeks to look at the CAP before we go into the public comment period. And I'm happy to take any questions on that and explain any more about what that will look like.
And I want to invite also commissioners and anyone online, members of the public, to refer to attachment C and D on this particular item. A quick note from me before we hear from fellow commissioners and from members of the public. I want to thank the DeCloris team for accepting the offer to officially be the translators of the CAP. Thanking also the county and staff for making that happen. And also want to point out that one of the things that really makes me happy about it is that this is locally sourced. So we're trying as much as possible to work with local organizations and stakeholders. So again, this is great development. Thank you all. Commissioners, fellow commissioners, so any questions on the CAP timeline? Yes, Commissioner Britton.
Just wanted to check. I heard you correct. You said we'd have 2 weeks to look at it before the next meeting?
It will depend on the date that we choose for the meeting. We should be ready to send it out the first week of November to the commission. And so then it'll be either 2 or 3 weeks, depending on, yeah.
Great, thanks.
Anyone else?
This is Sarah online. I have a question.
Yes.
Thanks for the update, Kristen. So to clarify with regards to the translation, is the plan still to not translate the full report, the full plan into Spanish? And if that's the case, is there a reason for that? And is it an option to translate the full thing?
We have, so it is like 160 pages of the roughly 200 pages in the document. Originally, when we brought the discussion to the Equity and Engagement Advisory Committee, we discussed the priorities for translation. And the discussion with the group at the time was that all 200 pages were not likely to be read. And I think that this is something that we obviously talked about, I believe, in August or July, whenever the commission discussed it's very, very long. And it is, every section is a cost to translate. And so we can revisit that. We don't have a quote for that because we hadn't originally costed out the whole plan. So right now it's about 150 pages of the entire 200-page document.
Sarah, do you have a follow-up question?
No, thank you for that, Kristen.
Mhm. Thank you. Commissioner Reed.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that there's a lot of replicated sections in the document. So the E&E TAC was concerned with making sure that the framework and the conceptual approach and the strategies were abundantly clear to those who were going to read it. But some of the other elements are repetitive of the content of the main document. So that was the decision, and also to get something done in time that will be available to our readers in the Spanish language. And so I think this is a good first step. And if we find a need or a demand for further translation as we go, we can consider that in accordance with the resources that we have available to us to do it. But we felt that this was the best way to get the material out there to this audience, so that they could best understand the approach that the CAP has taken at this point.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed, giving us an insight on the ETAC process on that. Any additional feedback, comment from fellow commissioners? So before we open this section to public comments, I do have just for clarification, Kristen, sorry. Okay, so again, for clarification, so we're going to have a section of the CAP being available in Spanish. That's going to be ready by the time it goes in front of the commission and in front of the Board of Supervisors. Okay, yeah. Just so it be clear, which is great. So for commissioners to be able to also have access to that for those who are fluent in Spanish. Second question, so this does not mean at all that the rest of the CAP will never be translated in Spanish. So it's going to be revisited sometime in 2025. And it all depends on the budget, mainly on the budget, and then whatever the commission and the people who will be on the commission will be deciding.
And correct. And I think to add one additional clarification to that, in this conversation of how long this CAP is, and the discussion was looking at some of these different chapters, the CAP at a glance summarizes the technical data that is spelled out over entire chapters into a much more digestible format. Ultimately, we want the entire CAP to be in a digestible format. It is not in an entirely digestible format in its current form. And I think that, you know, wanting to temper expectations when we look at the final CAP document next month, there's a complete rewrite process that takes months and months and months and months, or there's a middle ground where we're fixing critical errors. And then what we are hoping to do as staff is to take the key sections of the plan and distill them into one-pagers that will be available in English and Spanish that go over the key points. And so that'll be for the CAP at a glance of our data, of the different strategies, measures, and actions of our community engagement and outreach strategy. And so that's still something that we plan to do and have available in English and Spanish. And we will, once we get the blessing of the commission and the board on the plan, that'll really give us the ability to go ahead and do that. And we don't have to have all of that before we adopt the plan. I think that's a great way to do it, to get moving, get the approval, and then to have all of those materials become available.
Thank you for clarifying. So one more thing, also just again for clarification. So what we will see in Spanish will include some infographics, and those will also be translated already.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, this is it for me. Anyone else? Commissioner Dattel?
Is this, are you just asking about the translation related issues
Yes.
at this point? Okay.
Yeah. Just so we know what to expect coming forward. Thank you all. Are we ready to open this section to public comments, public questions from members of the public? Julia, I'll defer to you because members of the public, I think, are mostly online.
I don't see anything online at this time.
Okay. So I don't see any reactions in the room either. So I think this concludes our time on agenda item number 5. So we're moving on to Commissioner Datel. Yes, sorry, I didn't see you. My peripheral vision isn't good.
Ask, were we just talking about the translation issues or
Go for
other
it.
issues related to this item? And I do have a question about that.
Yes, you have the
So
floor.
it says staff will present a comprehensive summary of changes made to the cap based on public input. So does that mean we might also get a sense if there's a body of suggestion or criticism or whatever that they decided not to change? Or will we only have a summary of the things that are actually changed?
So in its current form, we have a list of the major changes that were made. And I think then this is not to say, well, we're not doing it because of this. You know, in a CEQA compliant cap, you have to go through every single public comment in line. That is not the strategy that we have taken, just given staff resources. And so we can go back through the list and see if there are critical things that will require that. There are a few sections where we are hoping to summarize it broadly, some of the comments that have been received as part of that change list. And so if there are critical ones, and I'm looking to Yuri, who's working on that, we can go back and look through the format to see what we can summarize in a digestible form. But any change that was made is detailed in a list so that it's easy to see what has been made. And some of them are broader comments that were made that were then integrated throughout.
Sure. Yeah, no, I am not, I'm not requesting every comment CEQA style, but more if there was, you know, something that appeared a number of times and that was just decided, you know, by the staff and the consultant that it should not be changed. So that was all I was asking.
Yeah, I think we can go back and look through. That is not currently the way that it's set up, and I can see if there are groups of comments. I mean, I think one that maybe fits into that category is we did receive some comments to completely rewrite it to make it digestible, and that's not something that we chose to do. And I think that that's something we can summarize in here to highlight what that looks like. Doing our best to move it forward, and we'll pick out any others that feel like they warrant that summary as well.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any more question? No. So one last, actually, sorry, that relates to the long range calendar. Would you refresh my memory and let me know if the green team meets quarterly or monthly?
Quarterly.
Okay.
The next meeting of the green, we want to meet at times that feel strategically appropriate. And so the green team right now is tentatively scheduled to meet in January to discuss the implementation plan moving forward. Originally, the green team was set up as a 4-meeting series over the course of a year. We have reached the end of that and we are continuing it. And so we'll decide as a group what feels like the best strategy. What we had discussed tentatively was once a quarter, because that is the frequency at which we will be planning to update our dashboard and our tracking metrics.
Great. Thank you, Kristen.
Yeah, of course.
So I think this is it on that particular agenda item, unless I'm mistaken. Okay, looks like we're ready for agenda item number 6. This is a big topic. So the next commission meeting, so November, we have a holiday that's usually, I don't remember if it's on the 4th Thursday. Okay, so the question is whether we move the meeting a week before, if you want to try to meet that week. I am going to leave the floor to Kristen at this point.
Yeah, I will say historically, we have moved our November meeting a week early. It can be tough to get quorum that week in case folks are traveling during that week. I want to defer to you all in terms of what makes the most sense. We are shooting for December 3rd. December 3rd is tentatively the last board meeting of the year. So we are hoping to make that meeting. We can make it the following week. It is probably tough. That's not the reason to move it necessarily. But just given that staff are going to be out that week, folks might be traveling. We wanted to see what you all would prefer. And obviously, having you all there when we adopt the cap is the most important thing, and or as many of you as possible. So want to see what works for you all as we move forward.
Thank you, Kristen. So I see there are some reactions. I want to address the fact that I didn't mention that the holiday was Thanksgiving's because there are some, it comes with, how do I say that? Memories that are not necessarily joyous for some members of the community. So I want to be mindful. Commissioner Reid will have the floor, then Commissioner Britton.
I think one reason to move it to November 18th would be for the public to have a sufficient amount of time to look at what we've adopted before the December 3rd Board of Supervisors meeting. So on that basis alone, I think it would be important for us to move it up a week.
Thank you, Commissioner Reid. Commissioner Britton.
So I'm not going to be able to make it. I'll be in Madagascar then. I think the bandwidth will be limited and the meeting will be at 3 a.m. But, you know, I'll try.
Where's your commitment, Ken? Come on.
I planned this trip around these meetings. Anyway, irrelevant. But what I wanted to see is whether maybe we should get a show of hands of how many people won't be able to make the 18th. And how many people wouldn't be able to make the 27th of the commissioners, just to get a sense of the lay of the land. Does that seem like a good idea?
Yes. So let's do that. Let's start online. So to our commissioners, including commissioners at large online, will you be available on the 18th? I can see your reaction. So Julia, I will rely on you.
Bernadette Austin can do either 18th or 25th.
Okay. Adelita?
Yeah, I can do both as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Morgan?
Either date works for me. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have a representative from UC Davis? No. Okay. So on the floor, who is available on the 18th? Show of hand. Commissioner Kim, Commissioner White?
Yes.
Okay. So pretty much everyone except the person traveling very far away.
Apologies.
Commissioner,
I wish you all well at that meeting date.
you don't want to take us with you. So Commissioner Alvarez,
Yeah, I'm not available on the 18th, but I'm on the 27th.
but you're on the 20th. Okay. So, and I'm available on both dates. I see that Commissioner Bennett isn't here. Okay, Pelayo, you have a different name today. You have Micah's name in front of you. That's why it's okay. So it looks like the majority of us can do the 18th, either dates. Ken is not available on the 18th, and Pelayo, neither. Okay. Kristen?
I will say staff can do either date. We can make either date work. I think that our limitation is trying to get as much as possible. The turnaround between the commission meeting and the last board meeting of the year is extremely tight. So
okay,
we will do our best to get all of our ducks in a row for that meeting. And we've done it before on that turnaround timeline. And so I'm happy to defer to whatever the commission decides. And if we would like to do the 27th so that everybody can be there, or the 25th, I feel completely happy.
No, it's the 25th. Don't stress us out.
I feel very happy about that too.
Okay, so we heard, thank you, Kristen. We heard from Commissioner Reid. Anyone else want to say something on that topic before we submit a motion? I know we haven't seen each other in a while. Okay, so yes, a little bit, and it's Monday. It's been a long year already. So I am leaning toward encouraging the commission to meet 1 week earlier. And also so the public and the staff have more time before the December 3rd meeting.
And let me just say, as one of the people who won't make it, I think that's a wise decision. I think our unanimous presence here is symbolic, and yet those differences are actual. And when you have sort of work versus symbolism, I support making the work better.
Thank you, Commissioner Britton. Commissioner Alvarez, I also want to give you an opportunity to.
Yeah, no, I'm fine. I agree with
Yes.
with Ken. Yeah.
Okay. I thank you both. Do we have a motion to move the November meeting to November 18th?
I move that
Commissioner Reed?
we move the meeting to the 18th.
Okay, and Commissioner Ullman the second. Discussions on that before we place to a vote? No, that was just a rhetorical question. We're ready to vote on the item.
Commissioner Reed,
Aye.
Commissioner Dowdle,
Aye.
Commissioner Ullman.
Aye.
Commissioner Kim,
Aye.
Commissioner Serena,
Aye.
Commissioner White,
Aye.
Chair Mbondo,
Aye.
Commissioner Austin,
Aye.
Commissioner Alvarez,
Aye.
Commissioner Britton.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. So this concludes our, do we need to take public comment on that? I'm sorry. Yes, any members of the public would like to comment on that item? And which I should have done that before the vote. Apologies. No, no comments? Okay. Do we have any members of the public? Just a yes or no. I don't need to know who is here.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. So this concludes our time on agenda item 6. We're moving on to agenda item number 7, approving the allocation of the remaining ARP funds. Let's receive an update regarding the funds that have already been allocated, and let's hear about community engagement package from Kristen. Please refer to attachment E.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to give a very brief overview, framing, remind us our long journey with the American Rescue Plan and fund package that we received over 2 years ago. And then I will pass it off to Juan, who's going to go into detail on the biggest chunk of this funding proposal. So hold on one second, I grabbed the wrong form. Thank you. So we, going back over almost 3 years at this point, received $1 million in American Rescue Plan Act funds from the Board of Supervisors for climate action priorities. And Julia, you can go to the next slide here. So to date, we have allocated just shy of $740,000 of that initial funding pool. There have been some additional funding allocations on top of that. The inventory and feasibility study, for example, was an additional pool of funding from the Board of Supervisors to advance that project. So we have $260,000, give or take, that we need to allocate by the end of December. December is the final deadline, federal deadline to obligate funds. We then have until 2026 to spend those funds. But this is the December 3rd meeting, really is our last opportunity to earmark these funds for specific projects for our work. So next slide, please. So when we look at this funding pool and what we have left, there are this is an opportunity for us as staff to be strategic for the year ahead and try to set ourselves up for success as much as possible when it comes to implementing the CAP. So I'm just going to walk us briefly through the first 5 of these items, and then I will have one slide and then I'll pass it off to Juan. So the inventory and feasibility study that we are working on with AECOM that Julia provided a staff report on at the beginning of the year, we were allocated $300,000 for that from the board. When we did the RFP process, the bids came in. The project total cost is $330,000. I will say the sustainability team has no budget for pretty much anything. We've been really looking at this ARP funding tool as our pressure release valve for projects. And we really tried to set aside taking that step back to when the commission first looked at how we were going to spend these funds down. We wanted to use it for projects that we didn't have grant funding for and other priority projects as necessary. And we've been setting aside a small portion of that for grant fund matches and things like that. And so really this is making us whole on that project in the best way that we know how with this fund. The second piece is funding the translation of the CAP into Spanish, wanting, as we discussed, a critical piece of this process and want to make sure that we have the funding to do that. The third piece is a staff training fund. So staff for this budget year had our training and travel budgets cut back almost to zero. And when we think about the year ahead, the opportunity for one, staff to learn as we bring on new staff members who are going to be shepherding the implementation process forward. Want to make sure that we can send everybody to trainings this year to fill knowledge gaps that we have. But also one of the other commission goals that we've had is to be able to share out lessons learned from this process to other communities. Not being able to go to conferences, events, anything like that that require travel or funding really limits us. So a small earmark for this would enable our team to go out, get traveled or get trained this year. The next item is a CAP Implementation Community Engagement Fund. Going back 2 years when we were adopting the CAP contract, we set aside a community engagement package that included a small pot of funding for miscellaneous expenses related to outreach and engagement. So fees for events that we're attending, supplies, printing of boards and the like. We have used that entire fund down, and I think it's been incredibly helpful for us to have things to put on our tables when we're going out and engaging with the community. And when we look forward to implementation, we have so many different types of projects and plans that we're going to be bringing to the community. Having some flexible funding that can allow us to tailor our materials and resources to whatever the outreach event is going to be hugely beneficial. And then the third item on here is a fellow for the upcoming service year. At the last meeting, I believe in March, it's all in my staff report, and hopefully making the fellows feel better about getting all your talking points wrong when you get to the podium. We approved funding for 2 Civic Spark fellows. Want to note why we're only asking for 1 here. We're not suggesting that we're going to scale back the number of fellows for the future service years, but the landfill fee money it was approved and those funds are coming in. And so right now we have Natalie is our building electrification fellow. We have some opportunities to tailor that work to also include our ZEV and electrification work moving forward in future service years. And that'll enable us to tap into those funds for fellows for that line of work. The equity and engagement piece is really separate. Those funds have a really designated purpose, but we still hope to fund 2 additional fellows. And then as a reminder, Juan's position is funded through the OPR grant that we received. We have an additional 2 years of fellow funding through that. So we're working it into grant funds when we have it, but this will give us the opportunity to bring on 3 fellows again next year. And then the entirety of those remaining funds, staff are recommending we put into a community climate action fund, which I will let Juan discuss in a second. And so, Julie, if you can go to the next slide. So just the timeline, December 3rd is when we would bring everything forward. All county funds will be obligated by the end of the year, and then we will have until December 2026 to allocate those funds. And so with that, I will have Juan come up and Julia will pull up his slides. He'll give his presentation and then we will take questions on both of these presentations at the end.
Thank you, Kristen.
So good evening, everybody, and thanks again for the warm welcome. I'm here to present on Yolo County's plan for allocating the remaining $182,000 of ARP funds for the Community Climate Action Fund and to request input on the selection criteria for these community project proposals. Next slide, please. So the reason for the action, Yolo County understands that community participation is vital for implementing the CAP. And Yolo County hopes to empower local CBOs, schools, and other stakeholders to take a leading role in completing these phase 1 actions. Next slide, please. Okay, Community Action Fund, Community Climate Action Fund description. So what is this? So the fund uses the remaining $182,000 in ARP funds to complete phase 1 actions of the Yolo County CAP. So this is a proposal-based fund. We hope to solicit project proposals from community partners that align with these phase 1 actions. And the hope is that all funded projects are to be completed by December 2026. Next slide, please. So this is some of our proposed selection criteria. There's way more detail in the staff report provided. So a lot of these selection criteria are based off of our early action project criteria and also some of the local green initiatives. So for example, the University of California system has a green initiative fund. I think they call it TGIF. It's pretty similar. UC Davis has one, Berkeley has one, Santa Barbara has one. So a lot of these selection criteria come from these sources. So some of the highlights of these criteria are that they must align with CAP 1 phase actions. They should have a geographic focus, specifically focusing on our unincorporated areas. We hope that they have a focus on collaboration. So if they can bring in additional partners, additional community-based organizations to complete these projects together, that's always a plus. They must have specific budget requirements, measurable outcomes, be sustainable, and have a plan for future funding if necessary. So we hope that they use part of this money to expand, maybe do some grant funding, so grant matching, and yes. And also, of course, have a clear project timeline. These are just some of the proposed selection criteria. There's a bit more in the staff report. Next slide, please. And so the timeline, so for November 2024, approval and criteria development, December through February, fund approval, and proposal solicitation. So this is when we bring it out to the community and ask for project proposals. For March through April, we will review these proposals and offer recommendations to the commission. May 2025, contracting and project initiation, and hopefully have all these projects done by December 2026. And of course, evaluation at the end. So that's it for let me get this right, Community Climate Action Fund.
Thank you, Juan, for the presentation. Please don't go anywhere. Suzanne first, if it's okay. Commissioner Reed, then Commissioner Britton.
Thank you. Can we go back to the criteria, Julia? Excuse me. Thank you. So my question here has to do with how these proposals are going to be generated. And one of the issues that we have when we're working with inclusion is that we put out opportunities for communities to participate in grant and project development, but it depends on the level of their capacity to respond and the time frame that we provide to them to be able to put together something that is community oriented and collectively represents the needs and the desires of the community. So I'm trying to figure out where to try and meet some of the criteria that we use in inclusion, which is to, excuse me, provide enough upfront time for communities to chat with each other and generate ideas and projects in a collaborative way. In a setting in which there's no capacity or not an existing capacity or organization to do that, my first question would be, do we have any plans to attempt to facilitate the ability of a community to come together and collaborate on a program that might meet their needs, that is relevant to one of our phase 1 strategies, which we developed based on the needs as we understood them of the various communities that we were trying to impact. And if so, what level of engagement would our staff as technical support to such an effort have to begin that process with a community? So I'll leave it at that.
I'm happy to take a stab at that. So, you know, Juan and I have been talking about a few different ways that we could approach this. So when we went through the 100 and can't remember the final number, just shy of 200 actions that ended up in the plan, several of them have intended partners or hopeful partners identified. And so I think that one way that we can approach this is going to the many, many partners who provided feedback on the plan, helped shape the action language, and bringing this opportunity to them as soon as possible, and you know, offering to talk through what this looks like. We have to, and I think that the additional steps of how do we form coalition partners, I think that there are some things that we can do to introduce folks together to say, you know, this action I think could be supported by a few different partners. Here's who else I think you could work with. We have to be a little bit careful when it comes to procurement guidelines, how much we as staff direct or share proposals that end up going out for our own funding pool. So I think that we can think about that. And, you know, these are, as Juan said, these are some ideas for how we can think about selection criteria, a key priority for us, and same with the early action projects. We had, I think, 9 different criteria that we were scoring on. The proposals that we were collecting were generally 2 pages or less. And so I think that we want to really keep it as manageable as possible for these partners as they're submitting applications. So I think that's to take a step back and summarize, going out and doing that individual outreach to folks who we think could be strong partners for this based on the actions to date, offering to make connections to partners. You know, Juan has got his fellowship year is supporting our collaborative engagement countywide. And so he can be in this role of helping to answer questions and help form teams to the best of our procurement limitations allow. And then we also want to develop a application that is reasonable. Something else that we did last time as well with the early action projects, and we can think about how we might do this, is we receive the proposals, and the same goes for other funding opportunities. You receive a bunch of proposals. Sometimes you receive 2 that are very similar. They'll be strengthened if they work together. And so I think it's natural that that will happen throughout this process as well. And that's something that we can do some work on the procurement end to understand what the abilities are in how we run this, like a solicitation that is generally pretty much you receive a proposal, you fund that proposal, versus something more like a grant where you are receiving proposals and then there can be some massaging to combine them to achieve overall grant objectives. So those are some questions that we can think through on our end.
Is there any possibility of money being directed to capacity building as a separate element of a community coming together to develop projects that meet their needs?
Before you answer that, clarifying question from me regarding the question you asked. When you say money directed to capacity building, do you mean that the organizations submitting a proposal could include that in the budget with the proposal, that they will need funding for capacity building?
I'm sort of going before going to an existing organization or shovel-ready project to sort of, you have a community, they have relationships among them, they have a need, they may not have fully developed the common ground for proceeding. Is there any, do we have any capacity to engage, for example, in storytelling or some kind of collaborative community building type process that enables them to then come together and generate projects that align with the phase 1 projects in the CAP?
To clarify, are you asking if staff can go out to communities to organize storytelling workshops to generate ideas?
Well, the idea behind it is that there, it's a delicate balance between coming in and saying, here, we're going to teach you how to storytell in circle, or letting it blossom, providing the support for it to blossom in its own, under its own capacity, with some of the relationships that we've made with community leaders and those kinds of things. And so the ultimate ideal would be that it's generated from within the community, but supported by our staff.
I think we need to think through how that would work and what our capacity is. I think, you know, from where I'm at, us organizing workshops to generate proposals, we need to have conversations with procurement about that. That is not how we were envisioning it. I think in the staff report on page 3, capacity building overall is something that we hope to fund through this, in whatever format, whatever form that is. And so capacity building activities, yes. But I think we would need to, hear a little bit more about what that looks like. And I see a couple of hands, and I don't know if that's in response to that.
So I want to say something before, giving the mic to another commissioner. So this is in part in response to the feedback that Suzanne offered. I think, would you remind me, because I don't see the slide up now, how much time between when you put the RFP out and when the organizations respond? Like, is it like 6 weeks, 2 months? What's the timeline again? And I'll tell you why I'm asking. Of course, there's a reason.
Supposed to be 2 months.
So they have 2 months from the moment they receive the proposal and the deadline to submit, right? So the reason I was asking was to gauge how much time they have to be able for themselves to identify possible partners and collaborators, go out, discuss with them, and come up, with a proposal where they have the names of the partners they hope to work with, and they kind of like have some sort of green light. So in that sense, I would think that 2 months could be a reasonable amount of time for them to ask you follow-up questions, but also to maybe start working on that, capacity building. This is just a personal opinion. In regard also to if I understood well what Suzanne was sharing, and then the follow-up from staff to maybe regroup and think about organizing workshops and something like that. The caution that I want to share here is that in my opinion, it has to come from the organizations, because they are the best place to know the needs. And so any workshop that they might need, etc., the idea will have to come from them, because they'll be the best people to tailor it. And then maybe from there, they can, also move forward with making it happen. And I think my only question when it comes to that, keeping that in mind, is whether or not the RFP, you don't have to answer now, but keep that in mind moving forward, whether or not the RFP will make room for them to express that and to say that they want to allocate part of the funding to make sure that if there is some type of training that is needed for them to be in the best position, because they're already a bridge between the community and the county, so just if the RFP has that language, then I think that partly addresses what Suzanne was referring to. Again, just a personal opinion. I would like to give the floor to Commissioner White, then Commissioner Kim, then Commissioner Britton. So Commissioner White.
Thank you very much. I have a statement, then a quick question. Statement first is Suzanne's idea is spot on. That's something that SACOG's doing right now. And if there's the way that we can make sure that we're linked with that, it's a coordinating council meeting that I go to, and I know you've been out, Kristen. We just had one. So let's make use of something that we already have that has funding to do exactly this.
And which SACOG council are
It
you?
is the SACOG Regional Coordinating Council, where all of these good ideas are coming together, and SACOG's got a couple $1 million to make good ideas happen. They're actually narrowing it down, and that's what we looked at in our last meeting. I'm happy to share the map with you. Yolo County is one of the priority areas for making this type of investment. And it has a lot to do around their mobility hubs projects. But there's a lot of money for getting the folks together to talk to each other.
Thank you, Chris.
So the other quick question I want to ask you is, when you come down to the grants themselves or whatever we're doing itself, $180,000 can be an enormous amount of money for one organization and a drop in the bucket for the other. The other thing is our phase 1 goals can be very, very specific, like convert your lawnmowers to electric lawnmowers. It can be really, really huge and wide, like reduce water use or buy more local agriculture. how are you going to put some limits on what these proposals are for?
You know, and it's tough. We didn't put lots of limits on it when we did the early action project selection as well. Where we could put a limit on projects. But I think that, for my opinion, maybe we get a coalition partners together that wants to put $100,000 and it's 8 organizations working together to do 12 actions. Like, I think I don't want to stifle creativity when it comes to the proposals we might receive. I think that'll factor in when it comes down to the selection criteria and the, quote unquote, bang for our buck that we're getting from the dollar amount. For the early action projects, we received some proposals that were the entire $1 million amount. And so we sort of waded through similar waters with that. But I think we're going to get a range. My gut was to not put a limit on it, but I think we're happy to hear any other recommendations if folks have a different idea of how we should proceed with that.
Thank you, Kristen. Chris, you have any follow-up question?
You know, as a person who runs a grants program, I got like a million ideas, but we can do those later.
Thank you, Chris. Commissioner Kim.
Yes, I have some ideas, but I know Commissioner Brin has raised his hand sooner, so you can go first.
Yeah, I think this is going to be the highest level question. What I didn't see was why a fund. The money is there. We did an early action list last couple of years ago, without a specified dedicated fund. What does this fund enable that just the previous mechanism of staff putting out an RFP, proposing a list of projects, this group or its successor sending it to the county, and let's go? Why is this better?
Kristen, before you answer, excuse me, do people online, were you able to hear the question? I'm only asking Ken because you were facing Kristen, so I want to make sure.
I can hear okay. Yeah.
Yes, okay, thank you.
And then just as a note, Sarah Morgan and Adelita both have their question online. So to Claire, are you asking why are we not going back to the early action project list, or?
No, I was asking, why do we need a separate fund for this phase of early action funding when there wasn't such a dedicated community development fund the last time, and yet a number of good actions were proposed and executed? Why don't we follow that model this time and save a step of generating a fund and a whole new mechanism?
Because we only have until December of this year to obligate the funds, and obligating them to a fund is sufficient. It's a mechanism, unfortunately.
Stalling the expenditure.
Yeah, from the county's perspective and ARP funding perspective, if it's put in a fund for that purpose, it is obligated. Yeah.
That was not clear in the writing. Thanks.
Ken, thank you for noticing those details. So let's Commissioner Kim, and then we'll take questions online.
Yes, thank you. I think generally speaking, for any remaining funds, either ARP and beyond, I think the criteria that speaks to me is the one that was on the screen, sustainability and future funding. And I heard grant matching. I think that also caught my ear. And the reason is, the reality is ARP fund is finite, and it is, once it's spent, it's gone. And in that framework, I would start on first principles. And first principles for me would be, if I had to invest that remaining funds, which is, I believe, 180K plus, that should be spent on 2 different imperatives. Number 1 should be how it can unlock more funding or more sustainability in the future, or how can that very finite limited funding help move the needle on the most important priority with our current cap, right? It would be a great way to kick off our cap goals by focusing on the most important 20% of our cap, dedicating, it's not much, but dedicating whatever it is to helping either move the needle on like one of our most important cap goals, or how can it unlock more funding? This is going to a question, but before, the second reality is, I think Commissioner Chris White said it, 180 is not a lot. And I saw 5 different line items. I'm not opposed to any of them. All of them are worthy. All of them are important. But I really believe like that funding will have more impact if it was focused on one major objective to achieve one major objective. And again, it could be to unlock more funding, or it could be to achieve one of the most important priority goals. With that, it goes to a question. Is there any funding from the county? Maybe and this is like, because I don't remember actually, but in the past, was there any funding ever dedicated to grant writers or people looking for grants? I remember there was like this one lady who was working on that, looking for grants. I'm not sure. I never heard like a due out of what happened there, but is anyone working on grants to get more funding to help achieve some of our CAP goals? If not, I would be thinking about that.
I know the answer, but I'll let Tristan take that on.
So I was hoping that Oliver from Supervisor Provenza's office was still on the phone. So staff developed a grant strategy for the early action projects going back at this point many years. We went through that process. All of the early actions, were funded through a variety of means, many of them through grants. So that grant strategy really met its objective. We had requested additional funding in this last budget cycle for a climate-specific grant writer. It was not funded through the budget, but Supervisor Provenza had reached out about trying to fund that specific ask for our team out of his personal ARP, his office's ARP funding pool. And so the last that I heard, that request had been submitted for that purpose, that the goal of that would be to, again, identify the top priorities for our CAP and immediately go out and start applying for grant funds to fund them. And I think to your other comment, we have also struggled with, this is a finite pool of funding. And I think that there are so many different ways that we could approach this. There are a lot of ways that we can write the request for proposals to draw the community's attention to the most important actions in the CAP. And I think there are a few ways that we've done that. We have obviously the phasing, and I think that making that language really clear. The DUDEC team also put together unlocking mechanisms. There are a number of different resources that we can highlight in the CAP and simplify and put into the RFP to make sure that we're focusing those actions as much as possible. And I think there is no one action. And that's really where we struggle. There is no one action that we can do. We are balancing both adaptation and mitigation priorities. And so this gives us the ability to try to address as many as possible. And I see Chris White.
I just want to make one more comment too. Knowing that this is also a super short time frame, it's holidays. I'm sure folks, all of you who work here would like to take some time off. In addition to that, among our biggest phase one priorities have to do with county buildings and county fleet, which is unfunded by the county. You're already doing investigation in how it could be fixed or repaired. And it is also, to the point about get a grant, I tell my clients, get a grant is the same as buy a lottery ticket. It's not the way that you do things. I would also like to suggest maybe that money get encumbered in a fund, and that fund could pay for some of the biggest climate change initiatives that the AECOM inventory uncovers. If it's replace a diesel generator that's running somewhere with something that's a cleaner generator, let's do something that has an immediate impact and is unfunded by the county.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a discussion for you all as well. I think that's a very different direction from a community focused fund. I'm thinking my way back CAP to 3 years ago at the early action project proposals. We didn't prevent other county departments from submitting proposals to the early action fund. And so there's a possibility there. I think this specifically came out of the many CAP priorities around unlocking community engagement and additional partnerships. And so that the thought with this really is not looking inward, but looking outward and trying to put these funds towards the community. And so if the commission has different perspectives on how to do that, we can definitely open that conversation up.
I totally see with that. I always struggle with do you make 1,000 tiny changes or do you make one big change that you can measure? And I don't have the answer to that, but that's the thing that I always work with,
Thank you, Chris. I would like to pause just for a brief minute here. So as a reminder, I will be asking you whether or not you approve of the creation of the Yolo County Community Climate Action Fund. So keep that in mind as we're discussing the particulars and the details. So at the end of this conversation, we need to vote on approving the fund or not. Yes.
I just have a little question about that too, is I don't think we can approve a fund. I think we can approve the recommendation that it go to a board to approve, but I don't think that we can approve a fund.
Thank you for correcting me. Exactly.
That's and I also want to note that both Sarah Morgan and Adelita have had their hands up on.
Yes, and then also Commissioner Alvarez. So I'm going to go online first, Pelayo, and then we'll come back to the floor. Let's start with Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. This has been really interesting conversation, and in my mind, I have a couple observations and a couple questions. So from the conversation, I'm getting the sense that the intent of this fund would be really to support community organizations in their endeavors and not necessarily implementing the highest level of greenhouse gas emissions reductions projects. Does that feel like an accurate summary?
No.
What?
Okay.
No, the intent of this plan is there are almost 200 actions in this climate action and adaptation plan. Staff cannot do all of them ourselves. We cannot do all phase 1 actions ourselves at the same time. The intent is to partner with outside organizations, special districts, schools, all of the many partners who fed into the CAP process and were identified as potential partners on these individual actions, and give them funding to take ownership over these actions. And so this is in our view, an opportunity to kick off implementation, bring partners on to work with us to implement CAP actions. And I think that it's not necessarily the highest greenhouse gas emissions items get precedence. This is an adaptation plan as well. And so really it's looking at what are the unlocking actions that we've identified in the CAP? What are the phase 1 actions? What are some of those greenhouse gas reduction priorities? All of those are laid out in different ways in the CAP. It's having folks come on and take ownership of those actions as partners with the county in implementation.
That's my understanding too.
Okay. Copy that. So then, I guess a couple of follow-up thoughts. One being, I like the idea of keeping it open so that community groups can come in with their own proposals and ideas. I do caution, I believe Commissioner White was talking about scale and scope of the types of projects that you're looking for. I do caution about, I don't know, maybe setting a minimum budget threshold. I would just be cautious about the county taking on a bunch of smaller proposals that you then have to administer, and that's, staff time and resources to administer a bunch of smaller projects. I understanding that it's both a climate action and adaptation plan, I would still appreciate having some sort of connection to greenhouse gas emissions reductions as part of the proposal review, because we're still trying to meet that 2030 net negative goal. So in my mind, that still seems like a priority. And then the final question would be, so understanding that this fund is to go towards the community to help kickstart implementation, simultaneously, does the county have a dedicated CAP implementation fund moving forward? Or is this kind of like the only bucket that will be available for the immediate future? And in that case, it sounds like maybe opening up to internal departments to apply for funds would be useful as well.
We do not have an additional fund. And so, when we go to the board on December 3rd, tentatively, with the final CAP, that is going to be a part of the presentation, is opening up that conversation. Obviously, we had gone through the process of getting a climate action budget priority last year. Budgets are really, really tight. And so there is not a fund that was established for that purpose. And we're really looking out over the next couple of years. And there are a lot of decisions that need to be made in terms of how this cap will be funded. Both, and I think both the sustainability division doing all of the external community facing programs that constitute a very large portion of the cap, but then also internally, how do we support the other divisions that are doing this work? I will say ARP funds cannot be used for staff time. That is one of the stipulations. And so that really limits it to material purchases, which I think that's where we get into what is the bang for our buck, a community program that is touching X number of community members versus a piece of equipment. These are all factors that we have to think about as we allocate the funds.
Thank you, Kristen. Sarah, I have a follow-up question for you. I was wondering, so if I understand you well, you expressed concern about making sure that part of the funds are specifically dedicated to helping us reach our GHG decrease goals, right?
Yeah, my thought was that it should be part of the selection criteria for proposals.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my follow-up question, given that we also now have a consultant who will be working on a dashboard for the county, measuring our progress. My understanding is that the dashboard is going to have also a list of actions that we're encouraging the community to take toward reducing our GHG emissions. Are you comfortable with the concept of knowing that those funds will also be diverted or used to support that goal? My point being that the dashboard will be able to inform us of where some of the priorities are, based on the progress that's being registered. So I hope I'm making sense here. Basically, I'm linking the existence of the dashboard, the progress made, the actions that are identified and listed on the dashboard, and how that can inform the decision when it comes to the spending on that particular fund. I don't know if I'm clear enough.
Yeah, no, you are clear. I think unfortunately the timing makes that very difficult.
Okay.
The RFP process, we won't have a consultant on board to begin the process of developing the dashboard until 2025.
Oh, I see.
And, in an ideal world, this would be an amazing revolving fund that could go on over the course of years, and we could have the flexibility of 6-month noticing to allow coalitions to form. We acknowledge this is an imperfect proposal, but we are trying to think about what is the best way to meet this December deadline that we have, and then also to set up a program so that we can get the projects to completion by 2025. By the end of 2026.
Yes.
So, in its current form, we would have partners on board by mid 2025. That gives them 18 months to do the project, which is that is tight. We are still wrapping up our early action projects, and some of them have been going on for years. And so, yeah.
To be clear, I wasn't suggesting that the money of the fund goes toward any work done regarding the dashboard. This is a separate thing. When do you think the dashboard will be online? Is it going to be at the end of 2025?
It's going to be at least midway through 2025.
Okay, so the reason I was asking that is just to see if there is an overlap between when there will be some information available on the dashboard and when the organizations, will start either submitting proposal or even when they start doing the work, just to see if that is something that will be useful to them as they're out in the community and doing the work. But I hear what you're saying.
We do hope to, if
everything goes without an H.
We move forward, the idea would be we would be launching the dashboard around the same time that we'd be bringing partners on. And we would love to be able to integrate those partners into the dashboard and have their information on there and have them, feed into the information that becomes the public, information that's shared.
Thank you. So I'm going to mull over the GHG portion of the work that was raised by Commissioner Morgan. We're going to listen to Commissioner Serena, and then we'll take it back to the floor here. Adelita, we're listening to you.
Yeah. Am I coming in okay, by the way? My Wi-Fi, it was a little acting funny with the audio.
You're very clear. Thank you.
Okay, great. One, a lot of comments have been made, and I don't want to, repeat anybody, there's a little bit of time here, and I just want to say just going back to Commissioner Reed's comments, that to me is really resonating, and I do understand that the American Rescue Plan funds are meant to benefit the community, like that, like their definition is really to have like an immediate impact on people's well-being and sense of safety and sense, of wellness and around initially, which was the pandemic, right? And what, of course, the climate crisis is, goes hand in hand with the pandemic and what we're seeing unfold, right? So just really kind of going back to why these funds initially were released, and I just kind of, again, it goes hand in hand with what I heard, Commissioner Reed say, and we really want to make this approachable by the community. The community should feel that they're represented, and of course, being, benefiting by these projects, whatever is chosen and selected, right? I do want to see, just amazing things come out of it. Of course, we got this small timeline, so just making the process as easy. And I heard that from, Kristen regarding what, like, maybe 2-pager submissions, possibly, just to make the process, expedite the process. So of course, we want to see people utilize whatever is coming out of this funding, right? Whether it's, access to transportation, public transportation, whether it's access to better bike infrastructure, things that are going to bring down, greenhouse gases and have a positive impact and meet our net zero goals, right? But how, I do think most been said, but I just kind of feel drawn back to what Commissioner Reed said. I do think we need to just assess and make sure that this is as approachable by our community and again, represented by the needs of our community. And hopefully we can meet, have a happy union and all of this. And so I just wanted to say that I had raised my hand and then I put it back down just because I was like, I think things are, I hear what needs to be said, but I just wanted to really quick chime in on that. And yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you, Adelita, for reinforcing, also adding to what Susan shared. Let's give the mic to Commissioner Alvarez, if you're ready for us, and then Commissioner Britton.
Thank you. I'll be brief. Yeah, I like the idea of a fund, but I also agree with other commissioners in terms of to take a focused approach. With 200 actions, it's going to be really hard. I mean, you may get inundated with proposals, and it's going to get really hard to compare a proposal from working lands with a proposal for buildings or energy or transportation. So.
Thank you, Pelayo. Commissioner Britton?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question I hope will lead us toward a decision, which is, if we say no here, that money's going to go away, right? So
Unless we come up with a concrete proposal for it between now and the next.
And with all respect to my fellow commissioners, I don't see us drafting a better proposal than the one that we have just seen, which looks very thoughtful to my eyes. So this looks sensible. I think we can individually chime into staff and give suggestions for relative priorities, and I think we trust them to accomplish that. And maybe we can look at it before it goes to the board, but maybe not. But I trust this staff completely, and we don't want to send that money back to Washington.
Thank you, Commissioner Britton. Before I give the floor to Commissioner Kim and Datel, please remind us by which supervisors meeting you hope to submit this proposal to.
December 3rd.
Okay, so this is also December 3rd.
This would also be December 3rd.
Okay.
And I think the important idea here is that we are requesting for a, approval of this idea in concept that we can then bring to the Board of Supervisors. For similarly for the the ag equipment replacement program. If you remember, we had multiple commission meetings in which we discussed the eligibility criteria. Giving us the approval will allow us to request the funds to be earmarked for this purpose, and then we can have an additional conversation around, and as we said, hope to bring the proposals to the commission if possible from a procurement lens. Again, we're trying to be careful. So I think this is, again, the first of many, and we will have the opportunity to massage the criteria as we move forward.
As a reminder to my fellow commissioners, so we had 30 minutes allocated to this agenda item. I think we borderlining, I want to say like 50 minutes, if not close to an hour. But I appreciate the passion and the interest. So Commissioner Kim.
Yes, so totally agree with the reality that we don't want to lose it back to DC, but also the reality that this is the only funding for our CAP implementation. That's my understanding as of now that we're aware of, right?
As of today.
As of today. And then,
Other than the landfill fund, which will be potentially several $100,000 a year towards transportation related projects. And so
Awesome.
that will take that a lot of our whole transportation strategy will be fed into that funding pool for implementation, which is transportation, as you know, is the single greatest source of greenhouse gas emissions in our CAP. So that really is an important distinction.
Thank you, Kristen.
and then also that the money cannot go to staff and we have limited time. We have like, a month to like get this all accounted for. So I think back to like the criteria that Juan mentioned that catches my mind the most is this idea of grant matching, right? Knowing that this can't go to, it has to go to community groups, but any community group that can take the 180 and turn it to a 400,000 impact, right? Like, so a force multiplier impact in whatever the impact is. For me, I realize like, trying to get GHG outcomes here may not be like the best like framing. I think it's just like who can make that 180 have the biggest impact? Can one group do double the impact, 2x impact? Who can do a 5x impact? And then number two, I do think it would be worthwhile to explore, is there any way to double up on Supervisor Provenza's plan of hiring a grant writer within, or getting a grant writer support from his ARP funding? Because if that's approved through his ARP, can you like also have a force multiplier effect? So, yeah.
Meaning, can we get more ARP funds towards grant writing? Or
Yeah,
can we
you
use
said
that-
Supervisor Provenza was trying to allocate some of his office funds, his personal office funds.
Mhm.
And so is there like any economic analysis on like, oh, if there's double the amount of funds of what supervisor, like grant matching Supervisor Provenza's funds focused on, grant writing for climate, the cap.
Yeah, I mean, so the grant writing piece, we will have, if that is approved, grant writing funds through that pot. Juan's role through the collaborative, the OPR grant also included grant writing funds over the course of several years for priorities related to the collaborative, of which the climate action and adaptation plan is a significant piece. So we have our fingers in multiple pots when it comes to trying to amplify those funds.
Thank you, Kristen. Just also, I want to highlight what you shared earlier, because I think that addresses Commissioner Morgan's concern when it comes to GHG emissions. Just a reminder that the landfill fee that will be kicking in 2025. So at the end of that year,
It's kicked in now.
it is already okay. So that's even better news. So that is also dedicated toward anything that's related to transportation, which, as you mentioned, is the biggest GHG cause of emission here in the county. So I think that that's definitely a big mitigation factor. Commissioner Datta?
Yeah, this is just a really quick point. I am concerned that we are centering equity and justice with this money, which is, loud and clear at the background statement, but is that adequately reflected in the criteria? I mean, is the fact that we're going for community-based organizations enough to ensure that? So you don't have to answer that, but just when we do finalize the criteria, it is something that we need to think twice about.
No, that criteria was considered. It's in quite fit. But no, yes, of course.
Commissioner Britton.
I would like to make a motion that we approve this list of transfers of funds.
So we are approving the recommendation for the creation of a Yolo County Community Climate Action Fund.
The other fund transfers that were on the same list.
And if I can pull up the
Yes.
staff report with the actual language.
That would be
So,
great.
The motion would be that the commission funds the allocation of $259,268 in Climate Action American Rescue Plan Act funding to fund the 6 proposals as outlined in attachment E.
I second that motion.
You don't want to repeat it? Okay.
That was my motion exactly, word for word.
Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner Britton, seconded by Commissioner Dattel. Do we have any public comments on that item? Julia, I'm deferring to you. Do you see any public comments?
We do have one public comment from Chris Granger, and then Commissioner White also has a comment as well.
Thank you. Chris, you have the floor. You're welcome to let us know which organization you're representing. You don't have to, but you're certainly welcome to. Thanks for joining us. You have 3 minutes.
I don't think Chris can talk. I don't have permissions to unmute her.
Sorry, I just, Chris, now you should have the ability to do that.
There we go. Thank you. Great discussion. I have a sort of quick question and thought around all of this. The fund name implies what I would call the idea of an ongoing thing. And I don't know if there's any way to frame this situation with the ARP funds as a unique sort of sub fund, like so that the commission could move forward with creating a ongoing fund and with some clarity around many of the questions that you discussed today that are free of the constraints of the ARP funding. And to have that be sort of a parallel conversation in the future where you get to think about ways that the county can think about its money and how some of it gets regularly put into a climate fund, and also where there are maybe these opportunities at different moments in time. Hopefully we won't be repeating a COVID experience soon, but where there may be these lump sums available that the county has that it can use towards its climate priorities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Noted. Commissioner White?
I just want to make sure that the recommendation or the motion says that we are recommending that we refer this to the Board of Supervisors for them to vote and approve on the funds. We are not approving the funds.
No, that was what the motion expressed.
Okay, I didn't hear the.
And we can add that
Yes.
note. And I think with all commission, any commission recommendation, this is an advisory commission to the board.
Yes.
We are providing recommendations to the board.
Absolutely. That is the role of this commission. We're not making decisions for the county. We do not have that power. And thank you for ensuring, Chris, that this is reflected in the language of the motion.
So I think Ken needs to state that he would like that added to his motion.
Yes, if that was not already there, I would like to make sure that ours is just a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors to approve that whole list.
Ken, we're going to miss you when you leave on vacation. Okay.
Jack, I hope.
Thank you. Any additional feedback on that before we vote? No, we ready to vote?
Yes. Julia and I were discussing how we're going to facilitate things a little differently moving forward so that one person is not presenting and working.
That sounds good.
So thanks, Julia, for flagging that and doing double duty here too. Commissioner Reed.
Aye.
Commissioner Daddle.
Aye.
Commissioner Ullman.
Aye.
Commissioner Kim.
Aye.
Commissioner Serena.
Aye.
Commissioner White.
Aye.
Chair Mbondo.
Aye.
Commissioner Austin.
Aye.
Commissioner Alvarez.
Aye.
And Commissioner Britton.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Concludes our time on that particular agenda item. So now we're moving on to agenda item number 8. Disclaimer, officially, we don't have 45 minutes to spend on that, but let's get started. You know, we might surprise each other.
Gonna stretch a little for NJ and Suzanne. If you came in late, I've got some cupcakes here left over from a Halloween party. If you need some sugar to get you through this last kick, please, everybody, help yourself.
Tristan, I see what you're doing here, like bettering us up before this big.
Oh, no. So I will try to keep my overview really short, given where we are on time. So the staff report has a lot more detail about this item, but why we are coming forward with this is we want to be really thoughtful about how we think about the future of the commission.
Tristan?
Yes.
Would you mind stating the agenda item just for the record?
Yeah, so this is agenda item number 8, a discussion to provide input on the future direction of the Climate Action Commission. And so if you refer to attachment H, we have the staff report that outlines what the current structure of the commission is and some guiding questions to focus our discussion. So the way that the commission charter is outlined, the focus is primarily on development of a CAP. There is a reference to implementation, but the specific roles of the commission become quite unclear once we go into this next stage. And so we want to have a conversation today that then staff can bring to the board subcommittee on climate with additional recommendations and feedback for what a commission looks like as we move into this next stage of implementation. Right now, the page 2 of the charter says upon adoption, the commission will advise Yolo County and the cities regarding implementation of the plan. You know, we put this together a long time ago, even that one reference there. This is a county climate action and adaptation plan. How are we advising the cities on? I think there's a lot that's unstated in the charter about how we'll move forward. And so for just a couple of other things to think about as we walk through this discussion, on page 2, we have the current breakdown of membership. So just as a refresher for everybody, we have 5 supervisorial district appointees, 2 at-large community members, a technical lead, that's a climate scientist, subject matter expert, 2 climate scientists or additional subject matter experts. And those are spread out, if I'm remembering correctly, across community engagement, transportation, and energy. Any of our technical experts, please correct me if that is incorrect. And then an environmental justice lead. And so that's where we are currently. The charter says that we could have somewhere between 9 and 11 members. And so what I hope we can discuss today, I know 6:30 is very soon, so we won't have time to finish this discussion, is thinking about what are the composition of the commission as we move into implementation to best meet our goals. What are the duties of the commission? Advising on the very broad suite of projects is inherently very different than advising on the creation of a plan, and we need to structure our time differently to achieve those goals. And what is the best meeting structure? You know, is a monthly meeting going to serve the same purpose? You know, we've really been marching relentlessly towards the development of this CAP for the past 3 years, and that's been really necessary. Does a quarterly meeting that is longer or formatted in a different way allow us to really dive into these projects, or do we keep that monthly format? So obviously, we have a lot of questions as staff around the best way to support these goals moving forward. And so I will just state the 4 questions that we have in the staff report for the record so that, and then I will pass it off, and I'm very excited to hear the discussion. So 1, how can the commission best leverage the community's diverse expertise to support and strengthen sustainability initiatives during CAP implementation, really emphasizing how are we getting the right people to the table to make sure that the community is really weighing in on our process moving forward. What's the appropriate role of the commission when it comes to implementation? What are the ongoing advisory functions? What are we providing policy recommendations on, and what's the appropriate niche for the commission versus something like the emerging county resilience collaborative? What should the commission be doing versus what should happen in that larger county collaborative format? Given the nature of cap implementation, this is question 3, dozens of actions spanning 10 strategies occurring simultaneously. What's the appropriate composition of the commission? Do we have set members, or should we have slots that rotate based on what projects we're working on in a given year? And in an ideal scenario, how often would the commission meet during implementation? So thinking again about that structure. So the charter itself, I think, allowed for a lot more flexibility than we ultimately used with the commission. There are opportunities to have more non-voting members that we can bring to the table. So I want you all to think creatively about what you think the best way to shepherd this process forward is. And then I'm happy to answer any other questions as we go, but I think I'll pass it off to you, Chair Bondo, to lead the discussion.
Thank you. I will start by, I have something to share, then I want to open the floor first online, and then we'll come back to the floor because we are more and we might have much more to say. But so thank you, Kristen, for this presentation. I'll try to be mindful of the time we have together. Very briefly and spontaneously, I want to acknowledge that this is something that has been brought up quite a few times already over the course of the year, just to get us to start thinking about what the commission composition and work will look like in the 2.0 phase. So secondly, one of my recommendations include keeping the same model in terms of who is on the commission, so ensuring that we have members from all 5 districts, ensuring that we do have subject matter experts, that we have an environmental justice lead, and that we have a technical lead. I think these are important. Goes without saying, we need to continue to have a UC Davis representative and someone also from the Yochadihi tribe as well, if they're willing to continue to collaborate in that capacity. It's my hope also that we continue to have representation from 2 supervisors. This is a privilege that I hope we do not lose. And I'm grateful for the staff also to attend, especially when the supervisors cannot be there themselves. So that said, I think that when it comes to the implementation phase, the commission as a body needs at least 1 additional representative, and that will be student. I'm thinking UC Davis because it's the biggest university. It's the academic body that has a huge impact on our GHG emission, but also they're doing a lot. They're doing so much work when it comes to reducing and to, bringing the university as a whole into the just transition process. But I think that hearing from the voice of a student, not just from the voice of someone who is in an administrative role, will have a great benefit regarding what is doable for the students, how they can contribute, how they can adopt some of the recommendations that are being made. With that said, and before I say more on that, I have more to say for later, but online, do we have either from Adelita or from Sarah? Is there anything you want to add before we turn it back to the floor? No, not yet. Okay.
Wait, you didn't call me, but I'd be happy to chime in.
Oh, Bernadette, I'm so sorry. I promise you,
okay.
you're on my mind. You're on my mind, like Georgia.
I
Keep
know, no, not a problem. And yeah, recognizing that we're short on time, I'll keep these remarks relatively short. So, sort of 2 or 3 guiding principles for this discussion. First is, I think it's really important for us to think, is this commission in its current status going to continue on forever? Or are there going to be limiting factors that we apply to ourselves or that might be externally imposed? And what I mean by that is, I want to just, recognize that there may be challenges in securing dedicated resources to continue to provide the level of staffing and support that this commission requires. Like, we just really have to be very pragmatic. The bookend of that for me is, I think that there would be a great strength in some version of this, whether it's representatives from different existing other commissions or working with other departments for this commission to broaden its impact. One, I think it will help ensure the kind of longevity and better integration of the sustainability work. And then also being able to kind of maximize the resources. So I just want to be really clear that sure, we would love for this to continue in perpetuity, but that might mean that we need to secure the resources before that can really happen. And I think that there's a way to kind of scaffold or have an interim plan. One, right, that's one perspective. The other is I really like this model that we have of the tax. And so is the TACs, the technical advisory committees. And so what I want to think about is there a way to incorporate some of those perspectives into this existing commission? You know, what immediately comes to mind are who are going to be some of the critical partners to make sure that we're thinking thoughtfully on implementation. You know, Chimavondo talked about students. I think it would be great to get some industry representation. We have some, but I think that perhaps those industries that are most impacted, for example, like, you know, agriculture and transportation, to me are at the top of the list, making sure that that is really deliberately represented moving forward. And if we can't continue to staff the tax as we have, to have some representation from those tax on this commission or whatever the new constitution is going to be. And then the last thing I'll say is that I think that the commissioner should really think about, you know, your role not as a commissioner, but as a constituent, as a resident of Yolo County, to, you know, help, you know, our peers, our elected officials, it's people in decision-making roles to help them understand the importance of this work. And as I'll just reiterate, integrate it with our other efforts. There's economic development, there's land use, there's a lot of different perspectives that I think are critical to this work. So I have a lot to say, but I'll pause there and let other folks continue the conversation.
Thank you, Bernadette. I have a follow-up just question for you, just for clarification before the staff or fellow commissioners react. So when you mention industry representation, do you mean on the commission or do you mean on one of the tax?
I doubt that we have enough funding to continue to staff this commission and tax. And I'm not even sure if we have enough funding to continue to, you know, have the commission meet and be as involved as we have been. Again, we need to be very pragmatic. So if we can't continue to, you know, host these tax, it might be good to have representation. So I bring up industry because in my mind, agriculture and transportation are the two biggest challenges and opportunities. That makes a lot of sense. You brought up students, and I think that we've had some really great representation from youth, farm workers, et cetera, on the equity and engagement tax. But I just want to make sure that kind of community voice and industry voice I think we're doing a great job, but they aren't specific set-asides on the commission. And if we don't have the staffing to continue with tax, having some sort of representation in some capacity on the commission is what I would recommend.
Okay, thank you. I'll let fellow commissioners react. Also, I just want to remind you, Bernadette brought up a point that I didn't mention because it seemed obvious to me. So moving forward, normally all committees do have the commissioners, the members have term limits, right? So my understanding is that at some point we are terming out, and then when it comes to the implementation phase, one of the things that needs to be clear, I guess, with a new charter is going to be the commissioners who are coming next. How long will the term be? So keeping that in mind. And another thing I'm inviting you to keep in mind as we are moving this conversation along is we were operating under the urgency of being as inclusive as possible in this process, but also being on the timeline, like having a clock ticking. So we were meeting every month. We were lucky to have the staff we have in terms of Kristen being able to bring more people on board. We were absolutely fortunate to have incredible CBOs join us and help with the outreach and so on. But the question again for all of you, we're not going to answer all the questions tonight, but we need to think about if we're able to keep this commission going for the implementation phase, what should the pace of the meeting be like? Also taking into account not just staff capacity, but the implementation is going to, require the focus of the CBOs as well. So going from monthly to maybe bi-monthly or quarterly, Commissioner Britton?
Yeah, so I first want to pick up what you just said, and the scope of this discussion is quite large. And I sort of have an idea of how we might go forward with it, that just a free-form discussion and brainstorming is superb, but maybe we should take the structure of those 4 questions and send it all to us as homework and have us all write our thought-out answers to the staff and then bring that back to the next discussion. And then we hopefully will be able to make some decisions. But before we do that, I have thought about this question really, really hard, and I want to add one thing to make the scope even larger. So, and it is the following. We were focused so exclusively on the cap at the instructions and in our charter. And in fact, our charter was narrowed by a separate action of the Board of Supervisors to explicitly fence us off from any county planning processes. And I think when it comes to implementation, that fence is inappropriate. And that perhaps we should even think about suggesting there be really a TAC specifically with the goal of integrating and liaisoning, is that a verb, between this commission or its successor and the county planning architecture, which is massive. Because the county planning can go forth without any climate input except for our hardworking staff here. But might be nice to actually have a formal way of bringing plans forward to this group through the TAC and then back to the planning without us having to go and petition them at planning meetings.
I have this white green because I'm pretty sure you are not the only one thinking that. So I had it on my notes. That was the second point I was waiting to make, which was, during this phase of the work, of course, specifically, we could not we didn't have the freedom to comment on items such as IAD or, the mining work being done in Yolo County and how that is impacting GHG emissions and the county goals when it comes to climate action. So basically, I'm just seconding what you just shared here in that, will the commission have the opportunity to address how some of the operations in effect in the county are impacting the different projects or the implementation of the climate action plan. Commissioner Ullman?
Yeah, I would say that I think the largest impediment to realizing the goals that we've set for ourselves as a county, and this is a very progressive and ambitious goal in terms of greenhouse gas limitation and other aspects of it. We're going to be asking people throughout Yolo County, unincorporated Yolo County, to alter the way they work and live and transport themselves, and in many other areas. I think the biggest impediment to achieving these goals is what I would say is business as usual. And it's very comfortable to say, well, it's been working for a long time. We don't want to take risks. Let's not stick our nose out into it. We're a small county, and all kinds of other arguments could be raised. I think, and that's going to be coming back to us once the cap reaches public awareness. You're going to have some reaction to it. But I also think that the way the county does business, I think other boards and commissions involving transportation and air quality and things of that sort that the county participates in need to hear from this commission. We're going to be the conscience of the cap. We're also going to be the conscience of the residents of Yolo County whose lives are going to be impacted by the implementation of the cap. I do think that the durability of this committee in whatever form it takes is going to be essential. So we don't wind up with a document that simply sits on a shelf, but is integrated into the way we do business and live in this county. And I firmly believe that when I heard the first time that carbon negativity was going to be the goal by 2030, presumably the end of that year, I fell out of my chair. I didn't really think it was realistic. I think a lot of people are going to have that reaction. I really believe in it. I think it's a worthy goal. But I just want to emphasize that the discussion I recently heard here on the prior item indicated the different facets of how people looked at a question, and in terms of maximizing impact or reaching them, benefiting the most numbers of people in the county, and various other things, the financial sustainability of the ARP funded program, whatever that might be. All of those things were correct. They were eye-opening, but many of them are going to involve mutual compromises. But I'm going to go back to the supervisor that I represent in District 3 and have a long discussion about where we are with this commission, whether I should even be on it, whether I'm qualified to do that. But I do think that we need to take a long view here of the role of this committee. I think it's commission. It's very important, and it's not. I see a few gaps. I see some gaps in terms of agency collaboration that need to be filled in with the cities. I think that my initial statement when I first joined this commission, and we were still meeting by Zoom, regarded an industrial-based land use type of decision-making. And I was told that we did not want to go down, quote unquote, that rabbit hole. And I really couldn't understand it. I was reading articles in the paper asking if this commission become involved in that particular question, and I'm not going to delve into it here, but I found that rather, okay, automatically we're being limited. And but I think that sort of thing, we need to be extremely zealous and proactive. I think what I've seen of the CAP, the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, is so impressive, but it's also so encyclopedic in terms of its breadth. I'm very impressed by it, but that's the role we need to play. So I just wanted to express myself on that issue. I think it's a daunting challenge here, but it's one that calls for this type of commission to be almost a permanent fixture in county government.
Thank you, Mark. Before I give the floor to Andrew and to Chris, so we want to address, Kristen is going to address the feasibility regarding providing feedback in writing. So this is something that we had discussed before doing the agenda review, and I had asked that she get an answer to see if we can do that in regards to the Brown Act.
Yeah, so what we'll ask of all of you, I think we know that we wanted to start the conversation and get everyone's wheels turning and then return to this over time. So I think, Ken, your idea of having folks send comments across these four questions would be fabulous. That is my ask to you all, that you do that. Staff commits to, Brown Act is all about ensuring transparency, coming back to the commission next month with a summary of all of the feedback that we received from commission members across this topic for our discussion 2.0. I think that there's one of the questions that came up in our agenda review meeting was, how urgent is this to figure out this question? And there are a few different things to think about. Obviously, CAP implementation is beginning. And so we need to decide in the interim, what does this group want to continue doing? You all are in terms at this point that generally end starting this summer. So we have time to think about it. My bad. I actually was under the impression that everyone was limited to 2 terms. In the current commission charter, we have 3 terms. So it's, sign y'all up for another 2 years. But no, I think that we don't have the same panic that I think I felt a few months ago, and like, oh my gosh, but a few other thoughts. Board assignments are redone at the beginning of the year, typically in January in a governance session. So how much can we provide feedback to the board before January so that we are on the same board? And I think this is going to be a stepwise process. There's going to be an interim of how does this group want to continue over the next couple of months as we begin implementation? What does a potential restructuring look like, and what is the timeline for doing that? So I think that just to put that out there, let's come back, have another discussion next month. We'll synthesize the feedback that we've solicited from you all, and then we can go from there.
Thank you, Kristen. Commissioner Kim.
Yes, I wanted to start by dittoing Commissioner Austin on when she said we have to be pragmatic, because I think the reality is there probably won't be enough resources for staff to do multiple bodies of people. It'll just probably be one commission. And if that's the case, then I definitely think the voices of the TAC, so definitely equity, TAC is important, but someone from the natural working lands tax. So definitely having some kind of expert or representative that would be from the natural working land. So someone from the ag community or RCD would be good. I think I really appreciate Commissioner Kent saying we should do the recommendations to the staff. But I think it would be interesting to also hear from the staff, like from a staff perspective, what would be the most value add that commissioner volunteers can bring to staff, knowing that there's limited resources, there's limited time, there's all of these uncertainties, like how can we bring the most value add? I'd also be interested seeing other counties that have now like a 2.0 commission, like a post-cap commission, what those types of commissions do, what their value add could look like. My general hypothesis of what that looks like is probably like less is more, just to be like, make it easier for staff. And then those folks being more technical, like having as much technical expertise to bring support to staff that may not have that technical experience so that we can be as many technical experts to provide support. So I imagine it being, you know, again, because it's one body instead of multiple technical advisory committees, having as many technical committee members there. And then less is more, I think, making it as easy as it is for staff. And then the last piece was if there was folks in the staff that or commission that could play a role as an operational idea. Scott Stewart sent an email, I think, to all the commissioners. So shout out to Scott for saying this. His first recommendation was that for us to help with looking for more funding or more partnership opportunities. I know we all have suggested many of those ideas. So more of those to help with the implementation of CAP, knowing that we only have 180K to start it off. So those are my initial thoughts.
Thank you, Commissioner Kims. Before we hear from Commissioner White, it is 6:18 p.m. I would like to ask the Commission if you're all agreeable to an extra 15 minutes and, you know, closing the meeting at 6:45 at the latest. We have 2 more commissioners to hear from and 1 members of the public. Show of hand, who is in favor? Extending the 15 minutes. Thank you. Online, I'm guessing any opposition online?
No opposition here.
None.
Thank you all. We're moving forward. So we're listening to Commissioner Chris White.
I just as a note, I may have children in here after 6:30. So
Looking forward to our youngest members of the public joining us. Thank you, Chris.
So I do believe it's important that this commission continue. I want to say that, but I also want to make sure that we separate what the commission is from what we people are. We were brought on for a specific challenge and for a specific reason. It is because we are all second guessers. And we needed to do that with our consultant, to pick a consultant and then second guess everything that they said to make sure we got a plan that represented our county and our people and what we each know about farms and water and technology and things. Once this plan starts getting implemented, I don't know that they need the talent or the thing that I bring. I don't know that they need me to be a little dark rain cloud on their parade like I was on Dudek. But what I do also know is that you are going to get grants, and those grants are going to require that you have community input. And this board or this commission may need to evolve into the group that acts as your public sounding board for the rest of the community.
Thank you, Chris. And I agree with you. Yes, Sarah Morgan, and then we're going to Commissioner Dettel and public comment. Sarah, you have the floor.
Yeah, this has been, I think, mentioned by a couple of commissioners, but just to echo that as part of this ongoing conversation about the future of the commission and what that looks like, I think it would be helpful, Kristen, if you and your staff spend some time thinking about what you can actually commit and what sort of parameters we should be thinking within in terms of what the future looks like. So just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
appreciate that, Sarah.
Commissioner Dettel?
Yeah, I mean, this overlaps with some previous comments, but it seems to me that we serve the public, the supervisors and the staff, and that we need to think about each of those each of those audiences for what we have done. So I really like Andrew's comment that he's going to talk to Provenza. I'll talk to Lucas. Even those who are not appointed by a supervisor might still find that a useful conversation to have. Think about who our publics are and, talk to them. And, we have all these organizations that we've had contact with, you can talk to your friends and associates and customers and so on and so forth as you think about this. And then I do think also to hear from the staff about which functions that we imagine going forward, they would find the most supportive, the most useful, the most efficient way of getting done. I think all three of those audiences we need to think about.
Thank you, Robin. Commissioner Reid, I heard a reaction to my right.
Oh. I was going to take this in a little different direction. My perception or attitude towards what we're trying to do is really guided by a fundamental belief that government can't do everything. And that what we're talking about here is a change in culture, not only within the government that we're affiliated with, but within society, within our communities, within the industries that operate within our county, and the organizations that assist and support our communities. So when I think about this, I think about the commission as an agent of change and how we become most effective in that capacity to transfer some of this responsibility that has fallen on our staff and us to the extent that we've been involved in the events and activities of creating the CAP. How does it become integrated in the routine operations of business, society, schools, the entities that make up, who we are? And how do we best become agents of change that sort of pass the baton more broadly into society to embrace the goals and the behaviors and the measures that are incorporated in the CAP? So that's the perspective. I just think we're at a time in our society where government is trying to do too many things at the same time, and we're not doing them really well, and we don't have the resources to do them. So something's got to change. So how do we motivate that shift? And a couple of other observations that we should take into account is that our landscape may change drastically on election day. And it will change one way or the other in a direction that we're not quite sure yet what it's going to entail. So that's a consideration that we'll have to factor into how we go forward. We already know the state of California is, in a budget pinch. So that will also be a factor in how resources flow into the county and into our communities and in any other, operation that affects our overall economic and social well-being. So that's sort of just to give you where I'm coming from on this. It's like, where we have a transition, we committed to a just transition. In my mind, that's a just transition to a circular economy. And that is, that's where I've tried to put the focus in the volunteer work that I do in several forums. So I'll be looking at it from that perspective. From the specific questions that are presented, I think I agree that we should have more representatives of the communities engaged in our activity, whether it's as commissioners or TAC. I like the idea of working groups that rotate or emerge in accordance with issues as they develop and more focus is needed. I don't think we need to meet every month. I think quarterly meetings is good with other meetings as needed. And some offline work being done within the constraints of the Brown Act and whatever we have set up with respect to our tax. So those would be my initial comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed. At this point of the meeting, I would like to invite my fellow commissioners to submit your feedback and comments in writing. And I would like to reassure members of the public that you will know what we have said in writing. So there will be a summary of our thoughts and suggestions, recommendations made public at the next meeting. I'm opening the floor to members of the public. I believe Chris Granger would like to make a comment. Chris, you have 3 minutes.
We have Chris and then Scott Stewart.
Thank you both for joining us. Chris, you have the floor for 3 minutes.
Thank you. This is Chris Granger with Cool Davis. I'm currently serving as a representative of Cool Davis on the planning group for the Regional Climate Collaborative, Resilience Collaborative. And so I just want to reflect on the discussion tonight from a perspective of what are the things that are forming up and that you have mentioned tonight within our different kinds of governance frameworks. So the commission is attached to the county, and you mentioned the county staff and programs and departments and that sort of integration of the climate goals into all aspects of the county work. And I think that's the work of the staff, and the commission should be attending to that and paying attention to how you can support it and inform it. I think the commission has a huge role in terms of policy. We have many more policy decisions to make, difficult decisions in the future, and that the commission can be a place where policy that the county has authority over is deeply discussed. And those two together, there's another category, which is barriers to action and governmental barriers to action. And how do we remove those and get around those and get people at decision-making levels to get beyond them so that we can get the work done. And then I'd like to talk a little bit about the Resilience Collaborative and how that you should have the staff come back to you and give you an update, but I think it might be very important for the commission to build a bridge, a formal bridge between the Resilience Collaborative, which is going to be about implementation, about fundraising, about bringing as many different parts of the county voices together in one place to move this agenda forward, and bringing all the jurisdictions together to do that. And that that if you build a formal bridge of representation back and forth between the Resilience Collaborative and the County Commission, that will be very, very helpful for moving policy, dealing with barriers, and also creating special task forces and things to work on things as we move forward. So thank you. Those are my ideas sitting on the Resilience Commission. I hope that Sarah might chime back in, since she is one of the other people here tonight that is working in that group as well.
Thank you, Chris. We appreciate your comment. Scott Stewart, you have the floor. You have 3 minutes. You're welcome to introduce yourself and let us know if you're representing a specific organization or else. You don't have to, but you're welcome to. We're listening. Thank you for joining us tonight. You're good to go, Scott.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yes, thank you for the opportunity to speak to the commission. I thank everyone for their commitment. I wanted to speak to a couple of things, in particular to remember the origin of the Yolo County Climate Action Commission was the children who walked out of their classrooms on September 27th in 2019. It wasn't our initiative that created this commission. It was those who were looking further ahead and noticing that they didn't have much future. So the idea that the commission purpose is limited to the cap, for me, needs to be examined. Yeah, I think it's much larger than that. It is the caretaking of climate action at the county level. And that would mean, very nicely, what has happened is we've seen general services, we've seen the sheriff department step up because of the attention on the cap and on greenhouse gas reduction in particular, but also in social justice and moving toward a just climate action oriented economy. So I would suggest that there's quite a large scope for this group, and it's part of the county's now strategic pillars is now in part of that is climate. All of that due to this group. We do need the Resilience Coalition. I think Chris's suggestion on the partnership is important. We also need a very clear understanding of how authorities can be built, which are beyond a particular one jurisdiction. This commission is particularly able to understand the implications of that. And until the Planning Commission has it in their charter that they will measure the effect of greenhouse gas increase or decrease on budget items, that certainly means that the Climate Action Commission has that to examine as well. It's a very important and yet to be done, very vital measure of how the climate action or climate justice is moving forward, is whether or not you're actually looking at it in every budget item. So just in general, I just think it's been a very successful commission, and I look forward to hearing more about what your plans are. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott, for your comment. Kristen, you wanted to react?
Two things. One, I neglected to mention before, Adelita had to jump off, but before she left, she's added into the chat that I unfortunately have to jump off, but I do want to echo the point on tax that Commissioner Austin mentioned. I look forward to reading the notes on this discussion. It's available for the public record. And then to the comment about the climate collaborative, I think that in the coming trying to think about next month, we're already adding a lot to the agenda, but we are getting to a point where the requests for proposals are being scored and we are close to selecting a consultant, which will really outline the process forward for that. I think that the work of the commission will also depend, and what the gaps are will depend somewhat on what that collaborative looks like. I think that we've really talked about the commission emerged to fill a gap that existed right now. And the collaborative is going to be looking at those gaps globally across the county. And then I think we're going to in some ways respond to and shift and change. And so it might be a few years of figuring out what the best structure is to support these emerging groups and the plan and implementation. And so I think as you think about putting together your feedback for staff, thinking about it in those terms of maybe what is an intermediate group versus what does this look like longer term and what are the appropriate times for that. We're thinking about that. And if you have any additional thoughts that can help shape our recommendations to the board on this, that would be really helpful.
Thank you, Kristen. This is a very stark reminder that we are, blazing a trail here. You're doing something that hasn't been done before. Thank you for the reminder. I know Chris had called on Commissioner Morgan for response. We only have 10 minutes left, so if Sarah doesn't have her hand raised, I'm going to close this item. Okay, so this concludes our time on agenda item 8. Again, we're going to submit in writing our feedback, recommendations, suggestions, ideas So let's now listen to Technical Advisory Committee's update. Bernadette, if you're still with us, I would like to start with you as the co-chair of the ETAC.
Could I just put in a request?
Yes.
I'm looking at my calendar and just feel that, oh my gosh, if we meet on November 18th, that is very soon. And so just putting some, we will be sending out the packet, ideally November 13th. And so if we could have written comments by Friday, November 8th, that's from today, but that is sort of, that would then give staff 3 days to summarize feedback. That would be my request, to just be specific. If you could send your written feedback by November 8th, we'll send a reminder as well, but please mark that on your calendars.
Would you please send us the reminder in writing as well? Like sometime this week, just formally ask us to by November 8th.
Yeah, looking to staff and Julia online, we can definitely commit to getting that out.
Appreciate it. Thank you. And then also on the bright side, our thoughts tonight will still be fresh on our mind within the next 2 weeks, hopefully. Okay, so Bernadette, are you still here? And could you provide us with an update on the ETAC?
I
Please.
mean, let me just do it really quickly.
Okay.
So,
And
yeah, so I
Suzanne
mean,
is here too.
really, we had, yeah, and I'll let Suzanne weigh in. So, a large part of what we discussed at the E&E TAC was this conversation about what roles they would like to play. I'll just reiterate that I think that the youth perspective is really strong on the E&E TAC. And so, you know, that was kind of reiterated. The other, and then also farm worker labor, the other piece that we did touch on was also addressed in today's meeting already. There was some concern, not concern, but the community-based organizations justifiably wanted to be involved earlier in the process. And they underscored how important it is, particularly in, you know, culturally appropriate. So not just linguistically, but does the messaging that we are using make sense? So I think I'll limit it to that in the interest of time. Suzanne, if you want to chime in, and then we can turn it over to the next TAC.
Thank you. Any reactions from commissioners on that? No? Okay, so this concludes our time on tax updates. We only had the ETAC on the agenda tonight, so nothing from the natural and working lands. We're moving on to, I don't believe we have public comments on that time. No? Okay. No, no public comments. So
Sorry. Yes, we should ask if there are public comments.
that's what I was asking, but they are none.
I do not see, unless Scott, I think your hand is still up from before, I believe. I didn't see it go down.
Sorry,
Scott Stewart.
it should not
Okay.
be up. Sorry.
Thanks, Scott.
Scott, you know how to keep the suspense going. So we are closing agenda item number 9, moving on to agenda item 10. Commissioners, you have any events you'd like to be included in the newsletter? Any reports? Yes, Commissioner Kim.
Yes, so this Wednesday, there's like a Wednesday and Thursday, a very exciting event happening at UC Davis. It's the California Climate Agriculture Network. And so there is going to be regenerative farmers and organic farmers and ag tech companies and a lot of people coming to Davis from all over California. I know Sierra Club California, its ag committee is going to be there in full force. And the main, it's going to be focused on policy discussions, including pesticide reform. And it's going to have a showcase of all of the, you know, regenerative farmers and their successes. And then they're doing a bunch of workshop for organic farmers as well. So it's a great event. It's free Wednesday, Thursday at UC Davis.
Fantastic. Thank you for letting us know. Anyone else? Yes, Commissioner Alvarez.
Yes, the Climate Center is hosting I believe it's a webinar, but it's what the California legislature achieved on climate in 2024, Thursday, October 31st, from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. I'll send out the.
Okay. Fantastic. Thank you. Any other announcement? Online? No? Okay, so I don't think we usually take public comments on this one, right? Okay, so this concludes our time on agenda item number 10. I am calling this meeting to an end. The meeting is officially adjourned. It is 6:41 p.m. Thank you all for the extra time. To those who will be traveling, and I'm saying this very neutrally, I'm not envious, safe travels and see you next time. Thank you all again for your work. And welcome to new staff members. Okay, everyone, well done. Oh, Ken, what are we gonna do with you? Are you coming back? You promise you're coming back? Okay.
Change, lifestyle change.
You know what?
I mean, there's evidence, there's evidence.
Yeah,
in
hoping
Latin
to.
America that women
Okay,
started to
we
do
have a lot to
family
catch up on.
planning big time when it
When
became
do
the
you leave again?
topic of daytime soap operas. I mean, this is known
coming back?
that it changes people.
A month ago.
I mean, that's get stuff in, into the change making channels, and it's
Right,
like
I
just
agree with
sitting
you
here
totally.
talking to each other. It's like,
I totally agree with you.
I mean,
Popular
this week?
culture.
yeah.
I can lead this week. Yeah, I'll tell you my updates in person. I don't want to say too much here.
About how you'd like to get
Everything
involved.
else. And the more and more I'm reading, like references to climate change and, it's getting incorporated in the literature and specific, allusions to getting warmer and, not having the snow that they have. And I mean, it's really becoming part of the conversation and we need to figure out
To come to Winters?
how do we get it incorporated in our culture.
I totally agree.
Sure.
I mean, maybe one of these grants, for the climate fund.
For sure, and we've got a
Some kind of popular culture, filmmaking or, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm listening. I'm not
serious.
distracted.
It makes a difference to people.
I
It's
know.
how they learn about stuff.
Yeah, so Friday you can do Friday.
It's
you on
not
your calendar
from
right
our,
Are
these
you like
specific
creating
laws,
a
and we do, these are
I
one-offs.
agree.
It's a fascinating piece.
Oh, yeah, isn't that fun? It's
Yeah.
like little bits of maps from different locations.
Oh, so great.
Yeah, my
I love
sister
this. I
found
love
it.
the
Oh,
whole,
thank you.
the whole outfit. I'm jealous.
We have a lot of fun.
And here I am in my riding.
Well, you often are, but that's obviously because riding is, bumped up against the commission meeting.
Yeah. Well, and for me, it doesn't make sense for me to be in Davis, go
Oh,
home.
exactly.
come back here. It's just not gonna happen.
I deduced that right away.
Yeah, right.
That is, if it's your schedule. And unfortunately, we're not, a county that demands, we get super dressed up for this meeting.
Yeah, we do. We have that one. Say hi to Sandra for me. Leaving? Thank you for the books. I will, I know, it's so cute.
You want to reverse? You guys are just as cute in person, and it's not just a supposed picture.
I have to thank you. That's so sweet.
Is this sustainable?
For the first time, right before the commission meeting. I was actually myself.
Yeah, there will be no tricks. Thank you for the treats.
It's so adorable.
It's unbelievable.
Good job, welcome back.
Thank you.
I'm sorry you couldn't stay in the whole.
Wrapped up. Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah, her name is Phoebe. As a fellow bird name.
Congratulations.
Yeah, isn't that fun? So I'm in a great mood. Despite the fact that the world is falling apart. And
This takes two.
exactly.
Yeah, Madagascar's gonna be great. I'll bring back stories of the years.
Please, oh gosh, please do, rub it in.
Yeah, of course, that's one of the things I do. See ya.
Trick or treat. Happy to go this year. I get a candy. Thank you so much.
Oh, my goodness.
That's so tough.
Oh, he's playing favorites. What you do?
Can you give us some more, I guess?
Here's my my bag. Trick or treat. I really appreciate it. That's gonna keep my stomach full between here and Davis.
I guess you are certainly gonna be tired than me like tomorrow. Thank you. I'm going very.
Yeah.
Okay. Alice, we have room on the commission. Do you want to join us?
think so. He just has to learn how to sit first.
That might be a
Yeah.
And then say
Yeah,
hi.
he's ready, yeah.
Right? How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Yes?
Yeah.
Sleeping at night?
Kristen,
And that's right.
Kristen still takes the brunt of it,
Oh,
so.
yeah. You are so cute. He's like, why does she talk so much? I need to be lowered. Meaning your face is.
He loves faces.
Hello.
So are you looking a little bit like daddy? You get that a lot?
We do, yeah. Especially like August.
Yeah.
But he actually likes just like Kristen did when she was little, so.
Yes. Yeah, they switch back and forth, I think, that's what I find with my.
Yeah, that's a new information.
Yeah.
Well, that was fun.
Thank you
It might be more fun for you.
You are.
Jump back in.
Thank you for the cupcake on stage.
Do you know if the restroom is open?
Yes.
Okay. That wasn't the reason, sorry.
Did not meet the standard of hugs.
Can go ahead and try.
So we'll set a date.
No, hold on. I actually just realized
Well, we're here, we have right here.